Staff Sergeant Maya Chun's world existed in the narrow circle of her rifle scope, the crosshairs steady on the compound's eastern gate 200 meters below. Her breathing had settled into the familiar rhythm: inhale, hold, exhale halfway, hold. The night air carried the scent of diesel fuel and something else, something wrong that made her skin crawl. She'd been in position for 3 hours, watching the enemy patrol patterns, counting guards, memorizing their routes. Everything was going according to plan. The mission briefing had been straightforward. Provide overwatch while Alpha Team extracted General Morrison from the terrorist compound. Simple, clean. The kind of operation Maya had executed dozens of times in her 8 years as a Marine sniper. But tonight felt different. The intel had come too easily. The enemy positions too predictable. The whole setup too convenient. Maya adjusted her grip on the M40A6, her fingers finding the familiar grooves worn smooth by countless hours of training. Through her scope, she watched Sergeant Rodriguez's team breach the compound's outer perimeter. Everything was proceeding on schedule. In 12 minutes, they'd have Morrison and be heading to the extraction point. That's when the world exploded. The blast didn't come from where it should have, not from the compound below, but from directly behind her. The shockwave hit Maya like an invisible freight train, lifting her bodily from her prone position and hurling her across the rooftop. Her rifle spun away into the darkness as she slammed into the concrete barrier with bone-jarring force. The night sky turned orange, then white, then a sickening red as flames erupted from what had been the forward operating base. Maya's ears rang with a high-pitched whine that drowned out everything else. She tasted copper and realized she was bleeding from her mouth. Her left shoulder screamed in agony, and when she tried to move her arm, white-hot pain shot down to her fingertips. Dislocated, maybe broken. She forced herself to focus, to push through the shock and assess the situation. The fob was gone. Not damage gone. Where 30 minutes ago there had been a command center, communications array, and staging area for the extraction, now there was only a crater surrounded by burning debris. Maya's mind struggled to process what she was seeing. The blast had been massive, coordinated, and it had come from inside their own perimeter. She crawled toward where her rifle had landed, her left arm hanging useless at her side. Every movement sent fresh waves of pain through her body, but she forced herself to keep moving. A sniper without her weapon was just another casualty waiting to happen. Her radio crackled with static. Then a voice broke through, panicked, desperate. "Base, this is Alpha 6. We're taking heavy fire. Where's our support? Base, respond." The transmission cut to static, then silence. Maya found her rifle wedged against a ventilation unit. The scope cracked, but the weapon intact. She performed a quick function check with her good handbolt action smooth. Magazine seated, barrel clear. She might be hurt, but she wasn't helpless. Movement below caught her attention. Through the damaged scope, she could see muzzle flashes in the compound. Alpha Team was pinned down, taking fire from multiple positions. But something was wrong with the enemy response. They weren't surprised. They were ready, positioned, waiting. A new sound cut through the ringing in her ears. Footsteps on the stairwell leading to her position. Heavy boots, multiple sets, moving with purpose. Maya rolled behind the concrete barrier, just as the rooftop access door burst open. "Spread out. Find the sniper." The voice spoke accented English, but the tactical coordination was professional, military. These weren't the usual insurgents they'd been tracking. Maya pressed herself against the barrier, fighting to control her breathing. Her left arm was useless, her rifle scope was cracked, and she was outnumbered at least 3-1. But she was alive, and that meant she still had a mission to complete. She heard them moving across the rooftop, their boots crunching on debris. One of them was close, maybe 10 feet away. Maya gripped her sidearm with her good hand, waiting. The footsteps stopped. "Blood trail here," a voice said in heavily accented English. "She's wounded." Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. They were tracking her, and she was leaving a trail. She looked down and saw dark spots on the concrete, her blood, marking her path like breadcrumbs. She had to move, but any movement would give away her position. A radio crackled nearby. "Command, this is Reaper Team. Overwatch position is compromised. No sign of the sniper, but we found blood. She's somewhere on this roof." Reaper Team. Maya had never heard that call sign before, and she knew every unit involved in tonight's operation. These weren't insurgents, they were professionals, and they'd been waiting for her. The footsteps moved away, toward the far side of the roof. Maya seized the moment, low crawling toward the edge of the building. Her shoulder screamed with every movement, but she forced herself to keep going. She needed to get to a position where she could see what was happening to Alpha Team. As she reached the roof's edge, Maya heard something that made her blood run cold, a voice she recognized coming from the compound below. It was Sergeant Rodriguez, but he wasn't calling for backup or reporting enemy contact. He was speaking calmly, professionally, in what sounded like a debriefing. Maya strained to hear over the ringing in her ears. "Package is secure." "Repeat, package is secure." "Moving to secondary location as planned." "Package?" They were talking about General Morrison like cargo, not a rescued prisoner. Maya's mind raced, trying to piece together what she was hearing. Rodriguez's voice, calm and controlled. The professional enemy team on her roof. The perfectly timed explosion that had eliminated their command structure. She crawled to a different position and peered through her damaged scope. In the compound below, she could see figures moving, but they weren't engaged in a firefight. They were regrouping, organizing, moving with the coordination of a successful operation. Maya's blood turned to ice as the pieces fell into place. This wasn't a rescue mission gone wrong. This was something else entirely, something that had been planned from the beginning. The explosion, the enemy positions, the professional team hunting her. It was all coordinated. A piece of paper fluttered past her face, carried by the wind from the burning fob. Maya caught it instinctively and saw it was a fragment of a mission briefing, partially burned but still legible. What she read made her stomach drop. Elimination of witness assets following package acquisition. Witness assets. That's what she was, a witness to be eliminated. Maya heard the footsteps returning, closer this time. She had maybe 30 seconds before they found her. Her left arm was useless, her scope was damaged, and she was alone on a rooftop with professional killers hunting her. But she was still alive, and that meant General Morrison might be too done. She made a decision that would define the next 8 hours of her life. Instead of trying to hide or escape, Maya-chan decided to hunt. The sniper became the predator, and the night was just beginning. Maya waited until the search team moved to the far side of the rooftop before making her move. The building's fire escape was damaged but functional, and she used it to descend into the chaos below. Every rung sent lightning bolts of pain through her dislocated shoulder, but she gritted her teeth and kept moving. The sounds of the search above grew fainter as she reached the ground. Level. The forward operating base was a hellscape of twisted metal and burning debris. Maya picked her way through the wreckage, her boots crunching on shattered glass and concrete. The explosion had been surgical in its precision. It had taken out the command center, communications array, and armory, while leaving the perimeter structures mostly intact. Someone had known exactly where to place the charges for maximum effect. She found the first body near what had been the communications tent. Staff Sergeant Williams, the radio operator, lay face down with a single bullet wound to the back of his head. Execution style. Maya's blood ran cold as she realized this hadn't been collateral damage from the explosion. Williams had been murdered. Moving deeper into the compound, Maya discovered more bodies. Each one told the same story. Professional kills, no wasted ammunition, no signs of struggle. These soldiers had been eliminated by someone they trusted, someone who had gotten close enough to kill them before they could react. Maya's tactical mind processed the scene with cold efficiency. The explosion had been a diversion designed to mask the systematic elimination of witnesses. But witnesses to what? What had General Morrison discovered that was worth killing an entire unit to cover up? She found her answer in the ruins of the command tent. A partially melted laptop computer sat among the debris, its screen cracked but still functional. Maya powered it on with her good hand, wincing as the bright screen illuminated her position. She had maybe minutes before the search teams expanded their perimeter. The laptop contained mission files, communication logs, and something that made Maya's blood freeze, a folder labeled Operation Nightfall that she'd never seen before. As she scrolled through the encrypted files, a picture began to emerge that turned everything she thought she knew upside down. General Morrison hadn't been captured by terrorists. He'd been investigating a weapons trafficking operation that reached into the highest levels of military command. The rescue mission was actually designed to eliminate Morrison and anyone who might have knowledge of his investigation. Maya's unit had been sent in as unwitting executioners, and when the job was done, they were to be eliminated as well. A sound made her look up from the screen footsteps approaching through the debris. Maya quickly copied the files to a flash drive and pocketed it before shutting down the laptop. She rolled behind an overturned vehicle just as three figures entered the ruined command area. "Anything?" one of them asked in accented English. "Negative. The explosion took care of most of the evidence. Command says to sanitize the rest and move to Phase 2. Maya recognized the voice. It belonged to Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Webb, the mission coordinator who had briefed her unit 6 hours ago. The man who had looked her in the eye and told her they were going to save General Morrison's life. "What about the sniper?" Webb asked. "Reaper team is still hunting her. She's wounded and alone. Won't last long. Make sure of it." She's seen too much. Maya watched through the vehicle's shattered windows as Webb and his team moved through the wreckage, collecting documents and hard drives. They worked with the efficiency of a professional cleanup crew, erasing evidence of their operation. When they moved on, Maya emerged from her hiding spot and continued deeper into the compound. She needed to find Alpha Team's last known position and determine what had happened to them. More importantly, she needed to find out if General Morrison was still alive. The trail led her to the compound's eastern section, where she found signs of a fierce but brief firefight. Bullet holes stitched the walls in tight patterns, and spent brass littered the ground. But there were no bodies, no blood trails, nothing to indicate casualties on either side. Maya knelt and examined the brass casings. Mixed in with the standard 5.56 mm rounds from American weapons, she found 7.62x 39 mm casings AK-47 rounds. But the firing patterns were wrong. The American positions showed controlled, disciplined fire, while the AK rounds had been sprayed wildly, as if the shooters had been firing into the air rather than at targets thought it had been a staged firefight, designed to provide audio cover for whatever was really happening. Maya felt sick as she realized how thoroughly her unit had been manipulated. A glint of metal caught her eye near the compound's rear wall. Maya approached carefully and found something that made her heart race. General Morrison's dog tags, caught on a piece of razor wire. But they weren't torn free in a struggle. They'd been deliberately placed, positioned where someone following the obvious trail would find them. Morrison was alive, and he was leaving her a trail to follow. Maya examined the area around the dog tags and found subtle signs that confirmed her suspicions. Disturbed earth near the wall, scuff marks on the concrete, and most tellingly, a small arrow scratched into the wall pointing toward the forest beyond the compound. The general was leading her somewhere, but he was being careful about it. The trail was subtle enough that casual observers would miss it, but clear enough for someone with Maya's training to follow Dot. As she prepared to leave the compound, Maya heard vehicles approaching. She took cover behind a concrete barrier and watched as a convoy of black SUVs pulled up to the main gate. Men in tactical gear emerged, moving with military precision but wearing no identifying insignia. Maya recognized the lead figure immediately, Colonel James Wolfe Brennan, Morrison's second-in-command and the man who had personally recruited Maya into the sniper program 3 years ago. Brennan had been her mentor, the closest thing to a father figure she'd had since joining the Marines. Seeing him here, coordinating with the cleanup crew, felt like a physical blow. Brennan had trained her, trusted her, recommended her for this mission. And now he was part of whatever conspiracy had gotten her unit killed. Maya watched as Brennan spoke with Webb, their conversation too distant to hear, but their body language suggesting urgency. Brennan kept checking his watch and scanning the perimeter. They were looking for something or someone. A radio crackled nearby, and Maya heard Brennan's voice clearly. "Reaper team, report. Have you located the sniper?" "Negative, sir. Still searching. She's gone to ground somewhere in the area. Find her. She's the only loose end left, and we can't afford any witnesses. The senator is asking questions, and we need this cleaned up before dawn." The senator. Maya's mind raced as she tried to process this new information. How high did this conspiracy reach? And what was worth killing an entire Marine unit to protect? Brennan's team began spreading out, conducting a systematic search of the compound. Maya realized she had maybe minutes before they found her hiding spot. She needed to move, to follow Morrison's trail before it went cold. But as she prepared to slip away into the forest, Maya made a decision that would define the rest of the night. She wasn't just going to follow Morrison's trail, she was going to hunt down everyone responsible for murdering her unit. The student was about to become the teacher's worst nightmare. Maya melted into the darkness beyond the compound, following the general's subtle trail markers while planning her revenge. Behind her, the cleanup continued, but ahead lay answers, justice, and a reckoning that would shake the military establishment to its core. The hunt had begun, and Maya-chan was no longer the prey. Maya followed Morrison's trail into the dense forest, her night vision adapting to the deeper darkness beneath the canopy. Every 50 meters, she found another subtle marker, a broken branch positioned just so. Disturbed moss on a tree trunk, small stones arranged in patterns that looked natural but weren't. The general was leading her somewhere specific, and he was being methodical about it. Her shoulder throbbed with each step, but Maya forced herself to maintain a steady pace. Behind her, she could hear the distant sounds of the search teams expanding their perimeter. Brennan's men were thorough, but they were looking for a panicked, wounded soldier trying to escape. They weren't expecting a hunter following a deliberate trail deeper into hostile territory. The forest floor told stories that only someone with Maya's training could read. Morrison's captors had moved through here hours ago, at least 6 men, carrying heavy equipment, moving in tactical formation. But there were other signs too, subtle disturbances that suggested the general hadn't been a passive prisoner. Maya knelt beside a stream and examined the muddy bank. Boot prints showed where the group had stopped to rest, but one set of prints was different. Morrison had managed to work his hands free long enough to scratch coordinates into the soft earth before his captors noticed. Maya memorized the numbers and continued following the trail. The coordinates led her to an abandoned logging road that cut through the forest like a scar. Maya approached the road carefully, using the tree line for cover. Fresh tire tracks in the mud showed where vehicles had been parked recently, multiple vehicles, suggesting a larger operation than just Morrison's capture. As she studied the tracks, Maya heard something that made her freeze. Voices speaking in hushed tones, coming from deeper in the forest. She moved toward the sound, using every bit of fieldcraft she'd learned in 8 years of military service. Through the trees, Maya saw the glow of a small campfire. She crept closer until she could make out 3 figures sitting around the flames. 2 were dressed in military fatigues without insignia, but the third wore the uniform of a Marine colonel. Even from a distance, Maya recognized the bearing and profile of Colonel Brennan. "Should have been simple," Brennan was saying, his voice carrying clearly in the still night air. "Morrison gets eliminated during the rescue attempt. The sniper provides overwatch and confirms the kill. Then the whole team gets taken out in the explosion. Clean, simple, no loose ends." "Except the sniper survived," one of the other men replied. Maya recognized the voice Lieutenant Colonel Webb. "And now she's out there somewhere with God knows what information." "She's wounded and alone," Brennan said dismissively. "Reaper team will find her. The real problem is Morrison. The bastard's proving harder to break than we anticipated." Maya's heart raced. Morrison was alive, and they were trying to extract information from him. But what information was worth this level of conspiracy? "The senator's getting nervous," Webb continued. "If Morrison talks, if he reveals what he knows about the weapons shipments, it'll bring down half the Pentagon. We're talking about 20 years of off-books operations, billions in untraceable funds." "Morrison won't talk," Brennan said with cold confidence. "He's old school, believes in honor and duty. But he doesn't understand that honor is a luxury we can't afford anymore. The world's changed, and we've had to change with it." Maya felt sick as she listened to her former mentor justify murder and treason. The man who had taught her about duty and sacrifice was talking about eliminating witnesses to protect a criminal conspiracy. "What about the evidence?" Webb asked. "Morrison claims he has documentation, proof of the entire operation." "He's bluffing," Brennan replied. "We've been through his quarters, his office, his personal effects. If he had evidence, we would have found it by now. Unless he hid it somewhere we haven't looked." Brennan stood up, his silhouette imposing against the firelight. "That's why we need him alive a little longer. Once we extract the location of any evidence, then we can dispose of him and close this chapter permanently." Maya had heard enough. She began backing away from the campfire, but her movement disturbed a branch that snapped with a sound like a gunshot in the quiet forest. All 3 men around the fire immediately went silent. "What was that?" Webb whispered. Brennan was already moving, drawing his sidearm. "Spread out. Check the perimeter." Maya ran. Her shoulder screamed in protest, but she forced herself to move through the forest as quietly as possible. Behind her, she could hear the 3 men crashing through the underbrush. Their flashlight beams cutting through the darkness. She reached the logging road and sprinted across it, diving into the tree line on the other side, just as a flashlight beam swept across the spot where she'd been standing. Maya pressed herself against a large oak tree, controlling her breathing while her pursuers searched the area she'd just vacated. "Probably just an animal," Webb said after several minutes of fruitless searching. "Maybe," Brennan replied, but his voice carried doubt. "But we can't take chances. Double the perimeter guards and tell Reaper team to expand their search grid. If Chun is out there, I want her found." Maya waited until their voices faded before continuing deeper into the forest. Morrison's trail resumed on the far side of the logging road, leading toward higher ground. The general was taking her somewhere specific, somewhere he felt safe enough to leave more obvious markers. She found the next clue carved into the bark of a massive pine tree. "Trust no one, Wolf leads pack." Maya stared at the message, her blood running cold. Morrison knew about Brennan's involvement, knew that the conspiracy reached into the highest levels of command. But if he knew, why hadn't he warned anyone? The answer came to her as she continued following the trail. Morrison had tried to warn someone, but the conspiracy was too deep, too well protected. His investigation had been discovered, and the rescue mission was designed to eliminate him before he could expose the truth. Maya's radio crackled to life, startling her. She'd forgotten she was still carrying it, and somehow it was picking up transmissions again. "All units, this is Overwatch." Brennan's voice came through clearly. "Target is confirmed in grid square 77. Converge on that position and maintain radio silence until contact is made." Grid square 77. Maya checked her map and realized with growing dread that it was exactly where Morrison's trail was leading her. Either the general was walking into a trap, or he was setting one. She picked up her pace, following the trail as it led up a steep hillside toward what her map showed as an abandoned mining facility. The markers became more frequent, more obvious, as if Morrison was no longer concerned about concealment dot at the crest of the hill. Maya found herself looking down at a cluster of dilapidated buildings surrounding the entrance to an old copper mine. Lights flickered in several of the structures, and she could see movement in the windows, but something was wrong with the scene below. The movement was too organized, too tactical. This wasn't a hiding place. It was a staging area. Maya raised her rifle and peered through the cracked scope. What she saw made her question everything she thought. She understood about the night's events. General Morrison wasn't a prisoner in the mining facility. He was in command of it. Through the scope, Maya watched as Morrison moved between the buildings, clearly giving orders to armed men who responded with military precision. This wasn't a rescue operation or even a kidnapping. It was something else entirely. Maya's world tilted as she realized the truth. Morrison wasn't the victim of the conspiracy. He was running it. Maya's hands trembled as she adjusted her rifle scope, trying to make sense of what she was seeing below. General Morrison moved through the mining facility with the confidence of a man in complete control, not a kidnapped prisoner. Armed figures deferred to him, taking orders and coordinating what looked like a major operation. The pieces of the puzzle began rearranging themselves in Maya's mind, forming a picture that made her stomach turn. Morrison hadn't been investigating a weapons trafficking conspiracy. He had been running it. The rescue mission wasn't designed to eliminate him. It was designed to eliminate the people who had discovered his operation. Her radio crackled again, and this time she heard Morrison's voice clearly. "Phase 3 is a go. Brennan's cleanup crew has eliminated the witnesses, and our sniper problem will be resolved shortly. Prepare for final extraction." Maya felt the world spinning around her. Everything she had believed about the night's events was wrong. Morrison was the architect of the conspiracy. Brennan was his lieutenant, and her entire unit had been sacrificed to protect their operation. But if that was true, why had Morrison left her a trail to follow? Why lead her directly to his command center? The answer came as Maya watched a familiar figure emerge from one of the buildings below. Colonel Brennan walked toward Morrison, but his body language was wrong tense, defensive, not the posture of a subordinate reporting to his commander. Maya strained to hear their conversation through her damaged radio equipment. The signal was weak, but she caught fragments. "Chun is still out there." Brennan's voice, tight with stress. "Doesn't matter now." Morrison's reply, calm and controlled. "She knows too much, saw the files." Then we accelerate the timeline. How long until the senator arrives? Maya's blood ran cold. A senator was coming here, to this remote mining facility in the middle of the night. The conspiracy reached even higher than she had imagined. She watched as Brennan pulled out a tablet and showed Morrison something on the screen. Even from her elevated position, Maya could see Morrison's reaction. His posture stiffened, and he stepped back from Brennan. "You did what?" Morrison's voice carried clearly across the valley, sharp with anger. "It was necessary. Brennan replied. The operation was compromised. We had to cut our losses. Those were good soldiers, Brennan. Marines who trusted us. Soldiers who would have exposed everything if they had lived. You know that. Maya watched in fascination as the two men faced off. There was clearly tension between them, a fundamental disagreement about something. But what? Her question was answered when Morrison pulled out his sidearm and pointed it at Brennan's chest. You exceeded your authority, Colonel. The plan was to extract the unit after the mission, relocate them, give them new identities. Not murder them in cold blood. Brennan didn't flinch. Your plan was naive, General. You can't run an operation this size and leave witnesses. The senator understood that, even if you didn't. The senator? Morrison's voice was deadly quiet. You've been reporting to the senator behind my back? Someone had to make the hard decisions while you were playing soldier. Maya realized she was witnessing the collapse of the conspiracy from within. Morrison and Brennan were turning on each other, and she was the only witness to their confrontation. But her position was about to be compromised. Through her scope, she saw armed figures moving up the hillside toward her location. Reaper team had finally tracked her down, and they were closing in fast. Maya had perhaps 2 minutes before they reached her position. She could run, try to escape into the forest, but she would never get another chance like this. Both Morrison and Brennan were in the open, distracted by their confrontation. She could end this conspiracy with 2 well-placed shots, but something held her back. Morrison's reaction to learning about the murder of her unit suggested he hadn't ordered it. If Brennan had been acting independently, then Morrison might not be the monster she had thought. Her radio crackled with a new transmission. This one on a different frequency. Overwatch, this is Blackbird. Package is inbound. ETA 5 minutes. Package. The senator was almost here. Maya made a decision that would define the rest of her life. Instead of taking the shots, she keyed her radio and transmitted on the frequency Morrison and Brennan were using. General Morrison, this is Staff Sergeant Chun. I'm in Overwatch position on the ridge. You have hostiles approaching from 3 directions, and Reaper team is closing on my position. If you want to live through the next 10 minutes, you need to listen to me. The effect was immediate. Both Morrison and Brennan spun toward the ridge, searching for her position. Around the facility, armed figures began taking defensive positions. Morrison's voice came back over the radio. Sergeant Chun, I thought you were dead. Not yet, sir. But I will be soon if we don't work together. Brennan's people are moving to eliminate both of us. That's impossible, Morrison replied. Brennan works for me. No, sir. Brennan works for the senator. And right now, he's got a gun pointed at your back. Morrison spun around just as Brennan raised his weapon. The general dove to the side as Brennan fired. The muzzle flash visible even from Maya's distant position. Chaos erupted in the facility below. Armed figures began shooting at each other as the conspiracy fractured along factional lines. Some were loyal to Morrison, others to Brennan, and still others to the mysterious senator who was apparently the real power behind the operation. Maya heard footsteps behind her and spun around to find 3 members of Reaper team emerging from the tree line. She rolled behind a boulder as automatic weapons fire erupted around her position. Reaper team, this is Brennan, her radio crackled. Eliminate both targets. Morrison has gone rogue. Maya realized that Brennan was cleaning house, eliminating everyone who could expose his role in the conspiracy. Morrison had been set up just as thoroughly as her unit had been. She keyed her radio again. General, Brennan's trying to eliminate all witnesses. The senator is coming to tie up loose ends, and we're both on the list. What do you propose, Sergeant? Maya looked down at the facility, where Morrison was pinned down behind a concrete barrier while Brennan's forces closed in on his position. She looked behind her, where Reaper team was advancing through the trees. I propose we survive long enough to expose the truth." "Sir." Maya took aim through her cracked scope and began picking off Reaper team members with precise shots. Each round found its target, her years of training taking over despite her injured shoulder. As the first light of dawn began to creep over the mountains, Maya realized that the night's events had been about more than just a conspiracy. They had been about the fundamental question of what honor meant in a world where the lines between right and wrong had been deliberately blurred. She had started the night as a soldier following orders. She would end it as something else entirely, a witness to the truth, and perhaps the only person left alive who could ensure that truth saw the light of day. The real battle was just beginning.